you're working with a sound system. Have you come across any situations where the venue itself or the other booths are complaining about sound? What do you have to keep in mind when you're working with sound in a trade show?
Good question, Tom. Few things. One of them is in a trade show, there's often so many presenters and performers, magicians, jugglers, what have you, doing their thing that actually it's good to have a microphone that has multiple channels that you can select from. Because sometimes you turn on and then someone else is coming out of your speakers, and so it's nice to have equipment that has that kind of flexibility so that you can find the channel that's yours. And a tip that Tim Noonan gave me, who's a magician and a trade show presenter, he said that if you have a mute on your mic, leave it on mute the whole day and leave it on, because that locks up that channel and no one can take that. So it's kind of one of those things that might be a little harder on batteries, but at least you're going to have a signal when you need it when you go back on. So instead of turning it off, leave it on, keep the mute on, and then just take the mute off when you go to talk. The other thing too about the sound, I mean, some companies, the show management has like a certain amount of decibels that are allowed as far as how loud you can be, and the whole sound level thing is kind of like, it's okay as long as you're not bugging people. So depending on your situation, a year ago I did a show in Vegas that we were right at the front and we had no one in front of us, and I could crank that thing up as loud as I wanted, and I got massive crowds because people could hear me, which is kind of a bonus. But if we would have had and then this year the same show in Las Vegas, I had maybe about 20 feet away another booth. We had a big wide aisle, but another 20 feet away. And they complained because they weren't getting anyone to their presentations. But they just had a straight presenter. They didn't have anything, entertaining that people want to watch. So they were kind of complaining, but I had a little decibel meter on my iPhone. I talked in my mic, went halfway into the aisle, measured it, and I listened to them and went halfway into their aisle. They were pointing a different way. I was pointing at them and they were pointing at another booth, and we were the same sound level. So it's sometimes the sound complaints or you're blocking the aisle complaints are actually just kind of they're jealous of what you're doing. So usually I try to go to booth before the show and kind of introduce myself and say, and kind of pre-frame it in the way that I'm going to be getting crowds, and as soon as we're done with them, you guys can feel free to have them, in this kind of way, like I'm doing them a favor. And when you do that, when you touch base first, hopefully they'll come in and at least complain to you first before they complain to show management. Because if they complain to show management, then it gets ugly, and then there's people are pointing fingers and getting mad and what have you. So that is a definite concern in shows, is the sound wars. And one other quick story here, Tom. I was in San Francisco in February, and I had a presenter who had a massive sound system, and he was pointing right at us, and then we were right angles pointing the other way with our sound. And I mean, he could have just wiped us out with, if we decided to go head to head. And we kind of talked, and I said, how about we just alternate? I'll do a show after you and you do a show after me. And he says, yeah, sure. So we just traded crowds all day long. So he'd get a crowd and he'd say, hey, go over to Anders, and I'd take him and then I'd send him back. And so, I mean, people would change over, but that cooperation really made it nice.